Are you ready?
Have you ever wondered what probiotics, biogas, and beer have in common? Although it may not seem like much at first glance, there are some surprising connections between them that we're going to explore in today's episode. But before we begin, I need to be honest with you, because the truth is that today we have a shitty episode, and I am talking literally here. We're about to embark on a journey starting from the depth of our stomachs, where we'll explore the benefits of probiotics, followed by a very, let's say, special transplant that will transport us to ancient China. Finally, we'll wrap it up with an invitation to join us for a beer in Argentina to wash away any lingering bad taste. You're listening to Fueled by Microbes, a podcast from the European research project Micro for Biogas. I am Joana Branco, and I'm here with you today to discuss everything and anything biogas. Listen wherever you get podcasts. Have you ever experienced a really bad stomachache or a trouble with your digestion? If so, you've likely heard about the benefits of probiotics. In case you're unsure what this means and what they are, and why supermarkets are selling these products, you should know that probiotics are actually live bacteria. They're beneficial for your digestive system, so they're often found in supplements, but actually their origin, they come from fermented foods like yogurt. Probiotics, they have millions of microorganisms that work together to provide benefits that can improve gut health and protect against the bad stuff or even repopulate your stomach after you've taken antibiotics, for example. For a long time, the general understanding was that probiotics interacted with the intestinal microbial community, potentially leading to an increase in bacterial diversity. But this could only be proven by analyzing poop. Not very nice, Well, it has been done, and after many studies, scientists are still a bit unsure whether these microorganisms actually increase intestinal diversity. However, there is something else that can be proven by analyzing what we do when we sit at the toilet. Just a heads up, this podcast episode is getting into some pretty shitty topics, so if you are in the middle of your lunch or something, we recommend waiting a bit before tuning in. So where were we? Yes. Instead of increasing the biodiversity of microorganisms that live in our intestine, there is another process whose goal is to increase the relative quantities of these microorganisms. It doesn't mean that we'll have many different species, it just means that we'll have more microorganisms inside the bowels. And believe it or not, even if you may have never heard of it, this is actually a millennia-old process. And we are talking about something called poop transplantation.
What?
Yes, you've heard that right, poop transplantation. Although the scientific name for this procedure is actually fecal microbiota transplantation, also known as FMT, so from now on I'll just say FMT, okay, to make it a little bit less gross. The story of FMT started a long time ago. So let's take a journey back 1600 years in time to ancient China, during the second phase of the Qin dynasty. During this period, China faced relentless uprisings, constant wars, but despite these challenges, it was also a time of cultural flourishing. It was in those early years when a Chinese doctor became famous for saving his patients' lives with an unusual procedure. How did he do it? Well, he treated his patients by giving them, you have probably already guessed it, right? The doctor apparently referred to this medicine as the yellow soup. References to FMT remained scarce after all this, for many centuries actually, until the 16th century, when an Italian doctor named Andrea Acquapendente started transferring gastrointestinal contents between healthy and sick animals. A bit after, like in the 19th century, a man called Antoine van Leeuwenhoek discovered that stool contained microbes, and he called them God's smallest creatures, which is actually a very sweet name, isn't it? Long time after this, during the 1940s, amid the chaos of World War II, scientists discovered Bacillus subtilis. This is a bacterium, and although it may not be familiar to you, it's very commonly used today as a probiotic in chicken farming and in many laboratories around the world for different biotech purposes. Around the same time, German soldiers in the African Corps, they noticed that local people who consumed fresh camel stools were not suffering from dysentery, a prevalent issue among their ranks. So they recognized the potential, and they isolated Bacillus subtilis from these stools, and through cultivation and administration successfully treated many patients. So this marked a crucial moment in medical history. The first FMT case, as we know it today, was performed not long after by Ben Eisman, a doctor from Colorado. We don't want to go into much detail into the process, but it seems that the cure rate for patients treated with FMT back then was already like 90%, and with minimal side effects. This has contributed to its increasing popularity. But do you remember that at the beginning of the episode we told you everything was connected? Well, this is because it actually is, because in all of these cases, we were talking about increasing the relative quantity of certain microorganisms compared to others to achieve beneficial properties. And this is a process that is technically known as bioaugmentation. Well, this bioaugmentation can also be used in biogas production. But let's hear about this from the experts themselves.
Bioaugmentation is the addition of living bacteria or microorganisms like yeast or fungi or archaea to a biological process.
We are hearing Jeroen Tijdman, a senior consultant from BioClear, one of our partners from Microbial Biogas. So in case you don't remember from our previous episodes, our project Microbial Biogas is a European project working to select the best microbial strains and consortia to optimize biogas production. But selecting the best microbes is not as easy as it may sound, and that's where bioaugmentation steps in. It's a revolutionary technique that's been used for quite a while now. In the late 19th century, scientists began identifying specific microorganisms responsible for organic matter degradation. By the mid-20th century, terms like bioremediation and bioaugmentation gained prominence, first in wastewater treatment methodologies and after for cleaning up contamination and stimulating the health and quality of soil.
We found that when there's pollution in the ground from a chemical washery or a fuel station, actually bacteria could remove this pollution and degrade it into carbon dioxide and water. This is of course great, but we also found that the bacteria need to be there and they need the right conditions. So first we focused on getting the conditions right in the soil, because if you have the right conditions, the bacteria can grow and do the right transformations. But we also found that sometimes the right bacteria are not yet there, or they're there, but in really low numbers. And you can imagine if you want to have a fast process, which you want to have if you remove pollution, you don't want that it takes 100 years. You need large numbers of microorganisms. And then we found that if you add those microorganisms to the soil and water system, actually they could immediately start degrading these pollutants, and the process would be a lot quicker.
Bioaugmentation was obviously very useful, and it could be also applicable to the biogas industry. So we already told you about anaerobic digestion, what these microorganisms eat. So today we'll also learn how to select the best performing ones and to increase their relative amounts, therefore to make the whole process quicker and more efficient. So this is a common thread between probiotics, poop transplants and biogas. So through years of research, scientists have discovered that adding more of the good microorganism will help the ones that are already in our body in case of probiotics, or in case of biogas will help the ones that already exist inside a biodigester, the place where biogas magic happens. This is a complicated process since anaerobic digesters have historically been black boxes, so to this day scientists are still unsure about the exact processes that happen inside these big tanks and actually how to improve them. So our project sampled 80 different biogas plants and started looking at the microorganisms that were found there and how to improve their digestive abilities.
One of these processes that we're used to at BioClear is the enrichment of microorganisms. So you're going to put very selective conditions to which few species are used to grow. And then you're going to enrich all the species that can grow under these conditions, and you get a hundreds of species, and most probably they will be working together to do different steps in the conversion. So once you get this simplified consortia of a few hundred species, you can really know how to produce them because the conditions were selected.
This means that they put these microorganisms through different situations regarding temperature, nutrients, acidity values, and when they know which ones are actually working, then it's time to grab them and put them on a digestive system. As they were studying all this in their labs in the Netherlands, they discovered something else, an interesting technique that had not been tested in this context before.
In humans, it is known that if your gut is not working well, so your own digestion is not working well, sometimes the doctors do a transplantation of poop from one person to another. So we saw this and we thought, well, and it's even, I'm not an expert in the medical field, but it's even known that you can, with experiments on mice, it is known that you can even influence the behavior of mice doing these poop transplantations. The microbiome is having such a huge impact on animals, and we know the microbiome of a digester is really the core of the process that we are understanding better in microbiogas.
And so they tried to replace this technique and do digestate transplantations. So digestate is the material that's left after anaerobic digestion, and it's an incredible organic fertilizer. It's very rich in nutrients and nitrogen, and apparently it's also quite ideal for the bioaugmentation process as well.
We tested, and it was really a surprise to us that it was working very well. And now we're really understanding this process and scaling it up because it has many benefits.
BioClear has been doing these transplants for quite some time in the labs, shifting bits of digestate from one digester to another. And so far the results are actually quite promising. And if the transplantation is successful, it can increase production. And the worst case scenario is not even bad. So if it does not work, it has a neutral outcome. So it's a promising technique since it's low cost and it has huge benefits. It's something that is already being scaled up by our Micro for Biogas project.
I think we're only at the start of it now, and it will continue for the next decades.
So far we've discovered the incredible interconnectedness of things, from ancient poop transplants in China to modern-day microorganisms in biogas plants. It's amazing how these tiny creatures can have such a big impact and produce something that can be used for electricity, for cooking, for eating, and so much more. We've discussed relative numbers, but now we're going to talk about something that already incorporates these quantities within it. We'll need to go on a journey to Argentina to learn more about it. So 2 decades ago, the Mycology and Edible Fungi Laboratory, part of the Argentinian National Research Center CONICET, published a very interesting patent. Dr. Edgardo Alberto, principal researcher of the lab, told us how they've been working and researching with mushrooms for years, selecting those species that can be produced at large scale, and in the meantime, they found something else to do with fungi that is actually very interesting.
We use raw material available in our region to produce mushrooms. Some of them are subproducts of other activities, such as wheat straw. But at the end of the mushroom production process, we had a large amount of substrate, which is known as mushroom spent substrate. What could we do with this organic material? And the answer was biogas.
They also discovered that breweries in Argentina were generating significant quantities of brewer spent grain. This is a byproduct of the beer production. It's also known as biogas. So they considered, why not repurpose this beer leftover? So they began utilizing it to cultivate mushrooms, and the spent mushroom substrate in turn was used to generate biogas. This illustrates the power of circular economy, also one of the main goals of our project.
Let me show you, using a simple example, how this process may help to circular economy. Imagine one field where wheat was grown. The first product is wheat grains, and the subproduct is the wheat straw. The latter can be used to produce mushrooms. You harvest the mushrooms, and then you have a subproduct that is the spent mushroom substrate. It can be used to generate biogas, which can be transformed into energy that can be used in the mushroom farm. But the anaerobic process also produces subproduct rich in minerals and water that is called organic bios, which can be used to fertilize the field where you will plant wheat for a second harvest. This is really a perfect cycle.
In Argentina, biogas was traditionally fed to pigs due to its abundance and quick spoilage, leaving brewers uncertain about how to handle it efficiently. However, with approximately 25,000 craft breweries in the country, alongside industrial beer production, it became evident that such a valuable resource could be used for something more beneficial. Enter biogas. So Dr. Alberto and his team, they began experimenting with brewers' spent grain to determine its potential as a valuable resource. They discovered that using biogas produced high quantities of biogas with a very good methane composition.
We have proved that the production of biogas based on brewers' spent substrate is possible in our laboratory scale. Our next step is to upscale the process 100 times to verify if the biogas is efficiently produced. After this, if the results are favorable, the next step will be to use a commercial biodigester.
So while BioClear is conducting experiments in Europe to enrich microorganisms for optimal biogas production, in Argentina, research is focused on the use of biogas for the same purpose. In fact, Dr. Alberto thinks that bioaugmentation can also improve their processes.
If we can isolate a bacterial consortium that is adapted to digest the biogas, it could improve and speed up this process. We are still studying this matter.
In our next episode, we'll introduce you to a very special group of microorganisms discovered by the Micro for Biogas partners. Microorganisms that are present in every biodigester. Because in the end, it's all about these tiny little creatures and adjusting their relative quantities, experimenting with them, discovering how to apply them to different fields, from probiotics to mushroom production, beer, and of course, biogas. And while scientists are still optimizing all these processes and identifying the ideal microorganisms for the job, there's one simple thing that we can do right now. Enjoy a beer. After all, even the leftovers can contribute to producing biogas. Cheers to sustainability!